it should be dvarim misyashvim al alev. Misyashvim al alev means I can explain it because I get it, because it's sitting here on my heart, and I know what I'm talking about, I care, and I know. It's more than just a yediyah, it's dvarim miyushavim al alev. And so, in order to get it, you have to really internalize it and process it and ask kashas and raise objections and say, this doesn't make sense to me, tell me again, I really want to get it. And Eli was adamant about that. I want to get it and say it again, and I disagree, and there's issues here. And that's she'ifa le'emes. That's aspirations for knowing the Word of God and the truth. And that's an important mitzvah for all of us. Nobody should compromise. Nobody should settle for less. Nobody should be shy. Ein abayishin loimet. Eli was never shy about his desire to learn and know. He was persistent in a struggle to become one and to internalize the message of the Torah. Eli struggled to accept Direi Chazal. That was a big issue with us. But he grew greatly in that area over more than 12 years, which we studied together. And I can testify the nature of his kashas, it evolved. And there was a depth and a growth. There was issues in the very beginning, in the early years, he would say things and people grumbled and they had issues. And I said, trust me, just be patient. Chazal teach us, Hamu'or shebo yachzir lemutav. The light of the Torah will itself bring people back and will open their eyes and their hearts to the Torah. And Eli experienced that after having been aside, just focusing on his issues of Shabbos and Kashrus and the things that he was doing in America. When he made Aliyah and he began learning more and more and hooking up, he definitely hooked up with his father and his grandfather and all the great Rabbanim in the family through the learning. He became a Ben Torah. He borrowed Sfarim from his son David. So sein Gesund himself is picking up the tradition of the family to be a Rav. My grandfather used to tell me that no chain is stronger than its weakest link. Because if you have a weak link in a chain, the whole chain will break unless, it's only as strong as the weakest link. So if Eli is the weakest link in this chain of this great family of Rabbanim, it's okay, because he made it through. And if you think about it, I have so much respect for that generation that came from the old world. Here he was born in Germany, and his father certainly was an old world figure. And he had a television repair store, so he made it into the new world to a certain degree, but again, he passed away early. And so it was really incumbent upon Eli to bring the Berlinger family and legacy into the new world. And Nofei Aviv and Harnof and Yerushalayim and Baka and Talpiot and Kochav HaShachar. These are new world communities. Klal Yisrael is now in a new world today. We're in the Medina, and we're here, and it's new. It's not what was, not in Germany and Europe or anywhere else. It's a new world of Klal Yisrael. And there were key figures and families. Everybody here knows there's parts of the family that are not here. They're not really so much part of Klal Yisrael anymore. And so anybody that is here, and anybody that's family is still part of Klal Yisrael now as things move forward, and we're getting close to the end, Bezrat Hashem. So there's a key player. There's somebody that made it through, and maybe they were a weak link, and maybe they were a strong link, but without that link, it wouldn't have happened. Eli's that link in the family, and it's a really key role. That role is called Tzadik Yesoid Oilam. Okay? The Rambam, I'll tell you, we're holding almost by Rosh Hashanah. Everybody knows 3 books are open: Rosh Hashanah, Tzadikim, Rishoyim, Gemurim, and Beinonim. And the Rambam has it as, it's sort of shocking what the Rambam says, that anybody who has more zchuyos than avonos is a tzaddik, and anybody that has more avonos than zchuyos is a rasha. And the Rambam has it that a rasha yamus becheto miyad. So there's many kashas. How could that be? Then there would be no Rishoyim in the world, because anybody who has more avonos than zchuyos, miyad humeis berisho, is the lashon of the Rambam. So there's kashas, and the Rishoyim struggle. But the Rambam's basic answer is, you don't know. Only God knows the Hesped, and there are big mitzvahs that have schar keneged hamon averot. And sometimes an avera, a person commits it under duress, he didn't know what, so we don't know how to weigh, we don't know how to balance the scales of divine justice. And the Rambam says that there's a time, there's like a cataclysmic religious event, and when the divine scales of justice could be perfectly balanced, because the Rambam says not only is it true of the individual, but of the whole town and the whole Medina and the ganze Welt, the whole world. So imagine if the entirety of the world were perfectly balanced between zchuyos and avonos. And Episayid says, Ashrei Yoshev Eisecha, okay? Or he turns away from desire. Somebody offers them a Dvar Isser, and they say, no, that's not for me. So at that moment, when really the existence of the entire universe was at stake, because the divine scales of justice were perfectly balanced, and a little Yidel does a shtickle mitzvah, or he refrains from a small Aveira. So he's tilted the scales of justice, and he saved the world. He's an intergalactic hero, and nobody knows. We're totally ignorant and unaware of this occurrence, but it happens all the time, potentially. The Rambam calls that person Tzaddik Yesod Olam. That person's called Tzaddik Yesod Olam because he's become the foundation of the world. When there was nobody else, he stood in the breach, and he tilted the scales in favor of Klal Yisrael and the whole world. Eli had that type of responsibility that you could count on him. He was at Tzaddik, where, again, I once asked the guys here, because a number of you are from that generation where Yiddishkeit was schwach in America, and people have siblings and certainly friends that didn't continue with it. They threw it away for one thing or another. So I asked, when did people make the decision to stay from, to be from? And Eli said there was never such a moment in his life. He never had a Havamina. I never thought about it, he said. He was a German Jew, and that's what he was, and he was going to do the mitzvahs the way he had always done them, and continuing that his whole life. That's a tzaddik. Never asked questions. He did what he was supposed to do. How do you do it? What do I have to do? But he never asked why. He never questioned. There was no questions by him in that respect. He was reliable and dependable. He had a sense of responsibility. He was a bal achrayus. And achrayus like that can support a whole community. On occasion, it can support the entirety of the world. Eli's punctuality and attendance, despite his ill health, are legendary. We saw how much he was hurting in the last year, and even more. His fiery passion for truth made an impression upon everybody who knew him. He had a great respect for the law. This is the same thing, that you have to do what you have to do, because the law is the law, and you can't fold the stender the wrong way, because it's not supposed to be done that way. And if you do, fire and brimstone on you, because things have to be done the right way. And he had a great respect for the right way. That came from the Breuer's community. The idea of respect for law and order, and to do things right, because that's the way they're meant to be done, it's something that this generation, today, the young people, the up and coming, it's lacking. We live in a world, it's called postmodern world, and people are encouraged to be true to themselves and their feelings, but respecting the mores of the community, the rules and the regulations, it's secondary, if not totally forgotten. They don't make them like this anymore. People that had a sense of, this is how it's done, and you gotta toe the line. And you're in big trouble if you don't. That's a message that he gave. Anybody who came into contact with him, like the rabbi said, every kid here in Nofei Aviv knows how to behave during davening, because you gotta do what you gotta do. Eli made it his business to remind us. So it's a message, it's an aspect of batel ritzoyncha mipnei ritzoynai, that negating one's personal inclinations to the Ratzon of Hashem, to the laws, to the Shulchan Aruch, to the Torah, to grow in appreciation of the dinim of the Torah. So if we would sum up the legacy and some of the things that we'll take with us, Saul had mentioned that, and we really saw this in the Gemara Eruvin, that for the period, there's different periods the Gemara mentions about, after the Ptira and to the Kfura, and the Kfura during the Shiva and the Shloishim and Yud Beis Chodesh. There's certainly, the Neshama is still finding its place in the Olam Yisrael Yoinim, and they're still connected, whether to the body or to the Makom Torah, the Makom Tefillah, which are here. And so we all, Marty mentioned it to me, and we all feel a sense. There's certain things that happen in Shir, and we all have a sense what Eli would say, and what he would do at that moment, because he was outspoken in his kapetus for the Dvar Emes. And so if we'll use this time of tshuva, Chodesh Elul, and a time when Echad B'nei Chabura, Sheyid'agu Kol B'nei Chabura, if we'll think about achrayus, responsibility for our families, for Klal Yisrael, for everything that we're involved in, not to see ourselves, somebody else will take care of it. No, maybe you should take care of it. Why don't you make yourself the one that is responsible for making the whole group work? Eli had that sense that it's me, and I don't have to look elsewhere. He's the guy holding the keys, and he's making sure the air conditioning's on or not, because he took responsibility for any group he was a part of. Eli was a Baal Tzura. He was a man of stature. He wasn't a tall man, he was a short man, but everybody felt his stature, that things should be done right, things should be done bekavod, things should be done properly.
And on time.
And on time, right. Choiku mishpat, law and order. And his hitmodedut, his dealing with Yisurim b'simcha. Despite everything and anything that might have bothered him, he was a happy man. And he had a sense of joy, and like we said, a sense of humor. He had a tune, whether it was a Mozart tune, he told me he used to bench, he used to say Shir Malos to a Mozart and to a Beethoven. There was an inner joy there. There was an inner music of sense and order in the world. I'm a Jew who serves God. He told me a story, told us that when he first became a professor, he would wear his kippah in his private office when he would meet with students, but not when he was out giving the lecture. And one day, a student asked him, Professor Berlinger, how come you wear your kippah in the office, but you don't wear it during the lecture? And he couldn't answer the question. He didn't have a good answer. I mean, it came certainly from the situation that Klal Yisrael was in those years. In America, people were still cautious of anti-Semitism and everything else. This was in the shadow of the Holocaust in that period. It was different than it is today. But he had no really answer that satisfied himself. So from that day on, he wore the kippah in class. If he couldn't answer, if he didn't feel comfortable with his behavior, so he changed his behavior, because things should make sense. So for just about everything he did in his life, he was really comfortable and it made sense. And that gives a person a sense of joy, a sense of inner quiet, because he lives in a world of sense, of rational subjugation to the will of God. And so the will of God was really important to him, of doing the right thing. Al pi the minhagim that he inherited from his father and the many generations. Bezat Hashem. Eli should daven on high for his almana Sandy, Shark for his sons and his daughters-in-law and his grandchildren, and for the Bnei Chabura. And we should all have nechama. V'yeh zichro baruch.